Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. I'd like to welcome you to a conversation that Jason and I had with Nehemiah Ray of Raise D Wild on Instagram, where he chronicles his two boys growing in their knowledge of the natural world, decreasing their inhibitions just by being part of everything that their father can expose them to. This Father's Day episode, I think you will all enjoy what Nehemiah and his sons experience in the wild. His wife contributes, and just a great family and a great example of how we should raise our kids rather than allowing them to raise themselves on electronics. Thanks, and I hope you all enjoy as much as we did this conversation with Nehemiah.
Thank you all for inviting me on, man. I'm excited. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with you fellas. I really am.
I came across Nehemiah's feed, and the reason that, you guys have often heard me talking about how I raised my kids kind of feral and raised them outside, and it was always about what can we find that's new. And when I came across Nehemiah's feed, my kids are grown. I've got a grandson coming up now, and Jason's got a few. But Nehemiah's boys, and just seeing the excitement that they bring forth when they see and learn new things. And that's what kind of drew me to your page, and I've been following along and just love the fact that you get your boys out there as often as possible. Well, the whole family goes out, right?
Yeah. And I appreciate you watching us, checking us out.
Yeah.
It's a family thing. It's actually one of the reasons I married my wife, because I'm an outdoorsman myself. I really like nature. I've been that way since I was a child, right? I was one of those kids where literally my mom was like, boy, if you don't get that out of the house, what are you doing? That was my type of childhood, bringing everything in my room. And my wife, she really likes the outdoors as well. That was one of the reasons that I married her, because I'm like, she's beautiful and she loves the outdoors. So I gotta marry her.
There's no question, right?
Yeah.
So Nehemiah, tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're a wildlife biologist by education and training. Tell us how you got to that point.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up always just exploring, being interested in nature. I went to college at a school called Claflin University. It's in South Carolina. And I studied biology there. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. That was really my goal, until I realized, I don't want to cut dog nuts all day. I don't want to neuter dogs all day long. So I kind of changed career paths, not knowing what I wanted to do, honestly, until I worked in the chemistry lab for some time, doing chemistry, but the biology side was always way more intriguing, way more interesting to me. I started working for a company that does wildlife removal, and I didn't know that was actually a career until I was just looking for jobs, within my career field. And I was like, what? People get paid to remove wild animals from people's homes? And so it was just like a perfect fit. So I worked there for roughly about 4 years until I actually got fired. I got into a car accident with their company vehicle, and they got bought out by Orkin. Maybe I shouldn't say that online. I don't know. But
That's
They
okay.
got bought out and they got like really strict with their driving policy. And so they had to let me go, which was like one of the best things that ever happened to me because I ended up starting my own company. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into that field. So we handle animals we do a lot of trapping and removal of animals from residential and commercial properties. So from beavers to honeybees to coyotes, rats, mice, flying squirrels, whatever
Po-
type of possums. Yeah.
Possum, I was going to say, there's one of your boys with the with the baby possum you were taking out.
Yep. So all of that fun stuff.
That's
That's
awesome.
cool.
And it's a service that, you know, people in the country don't really think about it because you just
Just
shoo
want to
them
get
away
it.
and they go on about their business, you know. But in the city, it's a little bit different. They get used to coming to one location for food, easy access to food. They're going to keep coming back as long as they can
Mm-hmm.
because they're kind of pushed into those smaller green belts. So it's, you know, it's a service that nobody up here has. Everybody does their own. And it's neat to hear about that from, you know, from different perspective, you being down in Atlanta, heavy populated area. But
Mm-hmm.
you tend to find the greenbelt areas too. I mean, a lot of your videos with your family, you guys are out in areas that you would never recognize as being close to the area where you live.
Yeah. One of the things about Atlanta, it's a city in the forest. So there's so many trees, there's so many
Mm-hmm.
woods everywhere. We don't have like a whole bunch of parks,
Mm-hmm.
like other cities. We do have parks, but it's like a lot of woods. And so we get up in those woods a lot.
Yeah,
We really do.
that's awesome. People have heard me say it probably ad nauseum, but taking the kids out when they were young was always about finding something new. And you seem to do the same thing with your boys. You get them out and they're always learning something new. You can hear the interaction and that kind of thing, and it's fun. What are some of the favorites that you guys have had?
Yeah, I like that you said that because it is always trying to expose them to something new. Even if it's honestly the same park, right,
Mm-hmm.
in a different season, it's totally different. It's like a whole new environment, different plants growing, different animals out, different insects, doing different things. So, one thing my boys really love doing, which we actually don't even have a whole bunch of videos of that, but they like getting in the creek. They love
Mm-hmm.
getting in creeks. They think snakes are really cool. They think snakes are really amazing, um, which is different, especially for, in my community. You don't touch snakes. Like, what are you
Right.
doing touching snakes? Um, but for me and my family, I try to really just teach them not to be afraid of nature, honestly. God made nature, God made the environment so that for us as human beings to enjoy, to partake of, to, be one with, to steward as well at a very high level. And so something that we often do when we're out in nature is, you know, we clean up as well, where
Mm-hmm.
we typically will have a bag or something like that. We don't, they think it's a game right now. I try to make it as fun as possible right now,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we don't throw trash down. Why would you throw trash down? That's just stupid. Come on, guys, let's see how many we can pick up. And it's working right now
Mm-hmm.
for their age. I'm like, so they're like
Yeah.
always wanting to pick up trash, even when they go to the grocery store. And um, it's, I don't know, it just me seeing them, it actually makes me more intrigued with nature. I've always loved nature myself. That was my
Mm-hmm.
field. But me seeing them in nature, it's like a different twinkle in their eyes. It's a different world that it just seems like they're so open to And we really deprive our kids of that nowadays. We really deprive them of that by letting them just watch TV or be on their phones. So to answer your question, they really like creeks. They really like seeing animals on our nature walks. And right now they're really getting into rocks. Like they're really getting into rocks. So I gotta step my game up because I don't know. I don't know a whole bunch
Got
about
to
rocks.
bring geology into the fold, huh?
Yeah, I do, man. I got it. So I've been actually doing some research on different rocks.
Nice. Have
We
they
found a
found
little
any?
geology program.
Sorry, have
That's
they found
neat.
any pyrite yet?
No, not yet. Not yet.
I can remember that as a kid finding my first piece of pyrite. I thought I'd struck it rich.
Struck it
Right.
rich, baby.
Yep.
Thought you were making it big time,
Yep.
right? Rich.
Yeah.
hmm
So now you grew up as an outdoorsman as well. So one of the questions that we often ask our guests is, what's your favorite ever outdoor moment? And obviously you're not necessarily coming at this from a photography standpoint, but what's your favorite outdoor memory ever?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not a photographer per se, like a professional photographer, but I do a lot of photography. I like landscape photography. I never thought about doing animals before, honestly, but I like plants. They do a lot better than people when taking pictures.
Yes.
Mm, my favorite memory or thought of me in nature was just I was like 8 years old. My grandfather, he lived in South Carolina. They had a lake. And so a pond, whenever we would go over there, that would be my parents weren't really into nature like that, honestly. But I would wake up so excited in the morning just to go to that pond and go fishing. You know, a lot of times it was by myself too. And I just remember, I don't know, seeing the frogs, seeing the turtles, catching fish, seeing stuff on my own. It was kind of like deep. You had to travel to get to his pond too. And so just that walk, going out there, observing the different birds that I would see. I think, honestly, my grandfather's pond, I never thought about that before until you asked that question. But my grandfather's pond, fishing out there by myself at a young age. That's probably my greatest. Yeah. I didn't realize that until right now.
That's
Thanks,
awesome. I can relate. I grew up on a ranch, on a large ranch, and everybody hears the number and thinks I must be rich, but I can promise you that wasn't the case. It was
Have you
32.
seen the show Yellowstone?
Yeah, no, that was not it.
Just kidding.
It was 32,000 acres that we had, and then we had another 36,000 acres of public land that was contained inside of that. But it was very dry. So, we weren't able to raise a lot of cattle there, but I just love being outside all the time. And when my grandmother would turn us loose, we were always down playing in the creek, and we would make little fish traps and then run the minnows in so we could catch minnows, and they would end up in the sink in my grandma's laundry room, and we would get in the same trouble you got into, when we were talking earlier. But that's where I always wanted to be. And my dad, I'm sure he did some of the same things as a kid, but as a kid, he was always horseback. And so he kind of saw the world a little bit differently. To me, the horseback time was work time, and I didn't enjoy that as much as I did just getting out and walking and going and exploring. I knew, he grew up there his whole life, and I knew places on that ranch that he had never been, just because we always explored, always looked to find something different. And so you kind of grow up with that curiosity. And I heard, so one of the videos you had a dragonfly, and you were talking to your boys about the level of success that dragonflies have as predators. And then I heard your youngest is it Arrow?
Yeah, his name is
that
Arrow.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so I heard Arrow. you said, let your brother hold it. And he said, I'm not afraid, Dad. And you're like, of course you're not. And when you were talking about teaching them to not be afraid, I appreciate that, because I think part of what's going on in our culture is fear. It's a fear of everything. And if you can just teach kids to get past that fear, I think, they can conquer the world pretty easy right now, because everybody is so afraid of everything around them, So
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was going to say that's a very good point. I didn't even remember I said that in that video, but I oftentimes try to ensure I'm affirming them to, not be fearful of things in life, not fearful of the unknown. In that video, the thing was, he actually was scared. Like,
Right.
oftentimes, so Carver, who's my oldest, he's the 5-year-old. He's the one that talks mostly a lot of the wild stuff that said is from him in the
Yeah.
video. He used to be terrified of any type of bug. I remember when he was like really, really young, he would like scream when he would see an ant when he was just outside. It was just like a natural fear that he had. And I'm like, oh no, I can't have a son that's scared of bugs. Like, no, we can't do that. And so when he was maybe a year old, I took him outside, and there was like this sounds like cruelty right here, what I'm about to say.
It's all right.
We took him outside. We were staying in a townhome at the time, and there was a cockroach that was like there. It was on his last leg, and so we spent literally 2 hours with him getting the cockroach closer and closer to him, and he would scream and yell until he's holding the cockroach. I'm holding it, and then like he's holding my hand, and he's like so terrified and screaming and yelling until he's holding it. My wife came outside like, what are you doing? Like, you're torturing our son. This is crazy. You're making our boy hold roaches, And she was like upset. I'm like, babe, you got to go inside. Like I have to make sure that he's not going to be fearful of things that are not harmful to him. Like they can't hurt him, Now we're on the side of, so now Carver's not afraid of like any animal, any bug. He wants to go and grab stuff. So now it's like, okay, son, like you never grab a snake. You
Right.
never grab without me, And so trying to get him to, now I'm trying to tame him
Temper him back a little bit.
Yeah, temper him back a little bit. But that's something that Carver's more naturally, now he's not afraid at all to grab things. But Arrow is a little more timid when it comes to that type of stuff. But I mean, I think all human beings deal with fear. And it's not about for me anyway, it's not about not being afraid. It's about fighting through your fears,
Being
and
able
do
to
it
overcome
scared.
it. Absolutely.
Yeah, do it scared. Even if you're afraid, don't want that holding them back in life.
Yeah. That's fun. Now you get to teach him, it's not about fear, but there are some you need to respect. You know what I mean? It's like,
Definitely.
Yeah.
You don't want to grab that wrong snake at the wrong time, or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So
see, you're in the country with quiet venomous snakes, though. We at least usually get a little bit of a warning up here. All we have is rattlesnakes. That's the only venomous snakes we have.
Oh, there's only rattlesnakes there. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
We got no copperheads, no water moccasins.
Oh, wow.
Nothing like that. No coral snakes either. We have milk snakes that look like coral snakes, or king snakes, I guess is their subspecies of king snakes, but that we don't have any other venomous snakes in Wyoming.
I think Georgia has all the venomous snakes in Georgia.
In North America.
Right,
yeah. In North America, we have all of the venomous snakes here. And so,
which is kind of cool. I mean, Yeah, I'm a little jealous. I love to try to photograph reptiles and stuff, so
Oh yeah, yeah.
getting
From
more
that
into
standpoint,
that.
that's
And
pretty fun.
so I haven't even done rattlesnakes yet, to be honest. I've done it a couple times, but yeah, it'd be fun to have those venomous snakes around. You just, again, it's not about fear. It's just knowing how to behave around them and how to handle,
Right.
or not necessarily handle them, but how to, act around them to be
Mhm.
safe.
Mhm.
But
Right. I just think if you understand the biology of the animals, understand
right.
what to do, their behaviors.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going around. Let me be honest. I'm probably the the they would call me the scariest wildlife tech while I was out there with the other company, because I would like be a little more hesitant. I would be a little more hesitant, especially with the venomous snakes.
Hmm.
Some of the guys, they would just go and grab them. Me, I was like, give me the snake tongs. Like, where
Yeah.
are those at?
Yep.
That's just smart,
How?
though. That's just
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. How often? I mean, obviously, you're talking about the city being built in the woods. How often would you guys get calls like that with venomous snakes? Was it a daily occurrence?
No, it's not well, it depends on the time of year. Let's say that, right?
Okay.
Right now, spring, summertime, we're getting a lot more calls. I think we had 3 snake calls today.
Hmm.
Um, four, yeah, probably 3 snake calls today. One in somebody's basement, another one on somebody's back porch, all type of different things like that. Ironically, even though we have all of the venomous snakes in North America here in Georgia, we don't get a whole bunch of venomous snake calls. It's really non-venomous
Mm.
snakes that we get calls about. And they're legal. It's illegal to kill a non-venomous snake here in Georgia. And so that's something that's surprising to a lot of people, because they're like, what? The best
Hmm.
snake is a dead snake. I'm like, actually, ma'am, that king snake is very beneficial to have around. They
Right.
eat venomous snakes, and they keep your rodent population down. I mean, I wouldn't want one just living in my basement either, but um,
Right.
yeah, we get the summertime. We're getting quite a lot of calls about snakes.
Hmm.
Uh, Wintertime, fall, it dies down.
Now, this is kind of off topic, but I know Florida, and primarily in the South, they've had the big inundation or epidemic of the constrictors, after they were illegally released from the pet trade. But
Mm-hmm.
now, I mean, the wild population has gone crazy. Are you guys seeing any of that? Has it made its way up around the panhandle, or is it still
Yeah, so
kind of?
we have gotten a couple calls about, people releasing their pet pythons and stuff like that, which we'll go get. I don't think it's like their population is encroaching into ours. I think it's
Mhm.
more so just like people here letting go of their snakes
Same type of
because
thing?
they
Yeah.
don't want them, which is, and that's a whole nother conversation, I guess, on
Yeah,
its own.
it is. And we probably don't want to have it, but I mean, we can have it after
Yeah.
we stop recording. But yeah, it's a little bit crazy. I mean, there's so many wildlife species that are people thought they would be a great pet, and then when they weren't, they just go out and release them. You look at lionfish, for instance, in
Mm,
the Gulf. A lot of people, lionfish are beautiful when you
yeah.
have them in captivity, but they're hard to keep, and they eat constantly. And so people just
Mm,
go release them into the ocean. So now there's tons of lionfish in areas that they never were historically,
right.
and the impact on the ecosystem, just by people releasing pets is significant. And so try to encourage people to, first of all, if you're not committed to it, don't keep a pet that should be wild. And secondly, don't ever turn them loose. There's always other options. So, but if you go
That's,
turn them loose, and then the ecosystem's dealing with a problem that you didn't want to manage. So,
nah, that's so true. That's so true. Even with plants, you see that as well. Invasive species taking over, whether it's, you know, because they thought it was a miracle plant. We have a lot of that here in Georgia. People thought these plants were miracle plants, and they bring them over from different areas, and now they're just demolishing, taking over, the sides of highways and everything.
Yeah, miraculously overrunning everything that's
Yeah,
there naturally.
right.
Yeah. We used to have bighorn sheep, the bighorn sheep winter range up in northwest Wyoming, ornamental plants like Dalmatian toadflax. It's a really pretty plant in the garden, but the root system of those things is really long. It can go like 20 feet in the ground, and there's kind of a waxy covering on the plant, on the whole plant, even the flower. So they're not controllable with, spray on control measures. And what they've found is they've just overtaken a lot of places. And then, once they start to overtake it, the roots are so deep, they get the water and the native grasses aren't able to grow. So you've got all this critical winter range for bighorn sheep, and it's just being overrun by these ornamental plants that are just able to outcompete it. They're just really durable with that wax, and the root system's deep, so they get the water before anything else, and pretty soon the sheep have nothing to eat. They have to find somewhere else to go. But I know it's the same down there, except biologically the biomass, I guess, per acre in Georgia is probably 1,000 times what it would be in Wyoming. We're kind of in the desert up here. You guys are more rainforest almost, really humid and long growing season.
Right. Very long growing season here. But yeah, it is a lot of plant life here as well. And that's something I'm really wanting the boys to get into a lot more is, wild edible plants. Not being afraid to eat stuff. What were you going to say?
I've seen a couple of the videos that they're going to town. I mean, one leaf after another.
Yeah. And it's just, in my opinion, I just think the world is so, creation is just so vast and so beautiful, and there's so much that you can learn from, and so much that we don't know about, honestly. There's so much that is out there. And so even for the foods that we eat the grocery stores have such a small amount of foods that we eat. And granted, I know shelf life and, all those type of things play a part into it. But, I really want to teach them at a young age to be explorative. Don't just go with what's offered to you. Know that in Georgia, especially, I don't know about Wyoming. I haven't been there yet, right? But I do know that majority of the plants that are in people's backyard are edible. like majority of them are edible. And so it's just good to know. I think it's just good life skills that we as a country, we've kind of fallen away from knowing how to live on our own, do the basics of life, identifying certain plants. A lot of times when we're going out into nature, we used to do these nature walks, these adventures where we would take big groups of people out, me and my wife, and then a friend of mine as well, and just like teach them about identifying certain plants, right? And it's just so amazing how much people don't know. Like the things that seem very basic and rudimentary to me, they were like blown away by, and like you couldn't even identify poison ivy. Couldn't identify what a pine tree is. These are, and they've been in Georgia their whole life, and it's like, wait, what? So just really trying to get them to a point of exploring more, being aware of their environments, and being able to identify, even if they don't want to be scientists, like I would like them to be. Of course, I would like them to be, but it's just a different world.
It's funny you said that. I mean, I think, like foraging's a skill that is good for a lot of people, right? And I know Ron is a lot like me that way, and you, as far as, for our local areas, we've learned some of those things, right? We know what kind of plants not to mess with, which ones are edible and that. And a lot of it's from, like you said, we had fathers that were like you. We tried to emulate the same thing you're doing with your kids. And it's really just a lot about like paying attention to what's around you and noticing the small things. It's not, don't look at the forest, look at the trees. Don't just look at the trees, look at the plants. Don't look at the plants, look at the bugs. There's a whole world, like you said, that's out there that's just, it's insane and amazing if you're paying attention. Or you can just go stomping along a trail like you're hiking and not pay attention to any of those little things, And so many people, even when they do get out, they just do that. They just go stomping around and hiking around or whatever, and they don't even notice the little things, So I think it's awesome what you're doing. I think it's so fun, and those videos are just, for anybody that hasn't had a chance to go check them out, you gotta go. If you don't have a smile after watching any of those videos, something's wrong. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's me and my wife say this often, like it's really easy to admire the mountains, right? Like it's easy to admire the mountains. It's a lot more difficult to admire the molehill, and so like being able to like you don't have to go far. You don't have to take a trip to Yellowstone, which that's on the bucket list for me. I really want to go there, but you don't have to go there.
You got two guides. We'll take care of you.
Yeah.
Man, it's definitely on the list though. Seriously, we'll probably be there next year. So I'll let you all know. But you don't have to go to Yellowstone to be able to, have a good time and understand the beautiful network and ecosystem and just how nature works. You can take a small plot in your yard and just study that for 10 minutes and you'll be like, wow, this is diverse. This is wow. Look at all the insects that are just in this one small area, or the amount of plant life, or the shape of the leaves, or I'm sorry. That's just
no. Don't be sorry.
No,
you're hitting
that's
the nail on the head.
Right on.
We talked about this a lot with during the pandemic, right? It really was an opportunity for a lot of people to actually explore their own backyards and really learn what's in their own backyard. And a lot of people did, and some people didn't take advantage of it, And so you're just speaking to that very same thing. You don't have to go far. We talked about it on the show a lot with different folks, but there was one guest we had on that started just photographing birds in her own backyard, and it was amazing. It was really cool. It was a whole project she did. And, it was like something about, from the bird feeder or something. I can't remember, Ron. I'm feel so bad. Cool. I'm massacring it. But no, that's your point's valid. You don't have to spend a bunch of money. You don't have to travel far. You can go explore and learn all kinds of crazy stuff just in your backyard, literally. So
there was speaking of that, and this was a pandemic project also, but in England, their restrictions were tight. They couldn't leave their own property except for a certain number of hours per day or whatever. And this guy, for the BBC, there's a documentary out there that he did on the bees in his backyard. And the way that he filmed it from the bees' perspective. And so everything looks pretty grand, when you're filming it from that small perspective. But it was amazing. You talked about behavior and teaching your boys to watch animals' behavior and that kind of thing. And that the behavior that you could see on the micro level, kind of the micro ecosystem that he had right there in his backyard, and just these individuals that he was able to capture different behaviors with. And it was really unique because you see the big projects all exactly like you were just saying. And that's what I'm trying to bring this back to is, it's easy to appreciate the mountains. It's easy to appreciate the big wildlife, the deer, the elk, the moose, that kind of thing. But a lot of times we walk by and miss the little things, and being able to be a keen enough observer and learn to be a keen enough observer to see those little things, I think is a special characteristic for somebody that does what you do. And what I have my degree in wildlife biology also. And, but even in that field, not everybody sees the world the same way.
This is true.
So no, honestly, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you're doing. And I've got the mountains in my backyard, but I'm a prairie guy. And life on the prairie is a little bit different. It's a smaller scale. But I appreciate the animals that can thrive here because it's not the most hospitable environment,
Right.
throughout the whole year. But yeah, when you get up here, and I encourage you to do so,
Yeah.
we will put together a great trip for you, your family, and take you out to see some things you maybe wouldn't get to before or otherwise. So
Nah, we would definitely be down for that. I've watched many documentaries
mm-hmm.
on it before. But yeah, I like what you were saying, honestly, just about, not everybody sees the world the same. And I was doing some studying on the different type of intelligences that there are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's, the intelligence where people are able to, with their bodies, a body intelligence, like LeBron James, for example, the way that he can move his body in the air and stuff like that's an intelligence. And then you have people who are naturally gifted with math, and that's an intelligence. But then there's a naturalist intelligence where people are keen and are naturally, see things in nature that other people don't see. And I just found that was like really cool, that's considered a whole type of intelligence that is
Mm-hmm.
out there, to be able to spot those small details and see that stuff that other people don't see. And nature actually changed my life on a couple different levels. Growing up, my father has his own HVAC company,
Mm-hmm.
and a very amazing man. Very amazing man, honestly. But my dad would always tell me that, I don't pay attention to details. That was one of the biggest things. He would say that all the time, and I didn't. I'd leave the garage door open. I would lose my keys. I would, I would always doing uh, that type of stuff often. But I remember one day I graduated from college and I was in my transition trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was just out in the woods, getting back to my roots. And I just started noticing, I'm sitting on this tree, and I started noticing the details of the bark that was on the tree that I was sitting on. And then I'm like, whoa, I don't know. It just stood out to me, and it never stood out to me before. It was almost like, I don't know, like a dream or something. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the bark and the details of of the bark. And then I flip it over and I'm noticing, oh man, there was some type of bug that was digging into the bark outside of that. And actually spending more time in nature looking for those things actually made me more aware of not just my surroundings, but just help me pay more attention to the details of
Mm-hmm.
life, pay more attention to those small things where I don't know if it was him always telling me and getting on me about paying attention to it, or if it was that or a combination of both. But now it's like, I really like to pay attention to the details and the small things because there's so much wonder. There's so much wonder in the small things. If you just are willing to open up your mind to those.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yep.
And most people don't see it ever because they don't take the time to sit on the tree.
Well, and
and,
especially in
and
today's
stare,
world, right? We talked about it. You alluded to it earlier. So many kids miss the opportunity nowadays because whether it's their parents or the child themselves, whatever, they just want to spend their time in front of a TV screen or on their phone or on some handheld device. And I've seen it so many times. I was down in Texas just recently, and I was at a pier, and we were eating some seafood at a pier down in Corpus Christi with some friends. And there's a bunch of fish in the bay there jumping around and stuff, and I'm watching them, and as the hatch is going, and they're doing their thing, and I'm just
Yeah.
kind of, this is so cool. And there's two kids sitting right there, both of them, their faces in their phone. And I literally wanted to go up to them and like slap them in the back of the head and say, "What are you guys doing, man? Check this
Pay
out. Look how
attention.
cool this is." It's like, come on, there's a life way better outside of that stupid screen, But my point, I guess, is that not that just that one scenario, but that is a very common scenario now, and I think it's actually causing this is a bold statement. I really feel like it's really leading to a lot of, it's not helping any of the issues. It's exacerbating the issues that we face in society today. This disconnectedness from nature and from, the natural side of things is really not helping our society, I feel like.
Man, I hate to say that I disagree with you, man. I don't think that that's a bold statement at all. I think that you're spot on. Like, I mean, it really is. We're made, when our bodies decay, they're going back into the dirt, like
Yep.
it's going back into the dirt. We come from dirt, we go back to dirt. And
Right.
so we're part of nature. We're from nature. And when you disconnect that, I just think it's detrimental. And I agree with you, man, 100%. Honestly,
Yeah.
It's quite amazing how even myself, even when I'm driving, like my wife loves being out in nature, but she's not like a nerd like me. Like she's not identifying all types of plants and stuff as she's walking around. She knows them now because I'll test her. Like, babe, what kind of tree is that? She's like, oh, come on, babe, that's an American beech tree. Like, oh, okay, look at you.
You were listening, yeah.
Yeah, you were listening to me. But yeah, that's something that I told my wife that often when our kids were young. I don't watch a whole bunch of TV, honestly, just personally. Like, if I do watch TV, I'm watching a documentary, right? Or I mean, I watch movies every now and then, and some sports, but I'm not like a huge everyday get on the TV type of thing. And I was telling my wife that I don't want my kids growing up watching somebody else's life when there's a whole life that's out here to explore. Like, I just don't want my kids to grow up that way. And so there's very little TV that we have going on here, unless it's something educational. It's a tool. I think it's a tool like anything else. I just don't want it to be just entertainment for my family.
It's a tool. It's educational. It's not a babysitter.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a babysitter. And a lot of people use it as that.
Sure.
In today's world. Yeah. I saw a hawk the other day. Like, I was downtown Atlanta, and it doesn't matter where I was, but I saw, yeah, nobody cares about that. But I saw a hawk come down, and there were a lot of people around me, right? But I saw a hawk come down, boom, smash on a pigeon and take it back up, and in that moment, I'm like, whoa, did anybody see that? Like, and I'm looking around and nobody else noticed it,
Wow.
and nobody else noticed it. I'm like, you all just missed out on something amazing right here. You all just missed out on, an opportunity to see something that, I don't know.
Not a lot of people get to see that. Honestly, you're right. I mean,
yeah,
and have it happen right in front of you, and you miss it. Oof. Yeah.
Right. And so it's just very, just being conscious, being aware, cognizant of, your surroundings is just key.
Well, I honestly could go on and on and on about how you're raising your boys, and I did the same with my kids, and I'm north of 29 years old now. And
what?
So, yeah, no, I did. I turned 30.
A few years ago, buddy.
A little while back. But I'm still trying to find new things, and that's why we're taking this adventure that we're about to go on into the Arctic, and just
that sounds so cool too.
And it took forever to get to the point where I could do it. And circumstances definitely had to fall in place, and they did, and I'm just the fortunate recipient of that opportunity. And so to be able to go, the only time I've ever seen walrus is on Jacques Cousteau or in a zoo. And to be able to go observe wild walrus, number one, polar bears, that's the main thrust of the trip. But to be able to see Arctic foxes,
ptarmigan,
different species of caribou, hopefully some ptarmigan, just all these animals that we can't even relate to here because of where I live. and have the opportunity to go interact and to think about that world being a lot larger. That world is pretty small for me now because I've been very fortunate, gotten out a lot and been able to see a lot. And so the new things are hard to find. And so I kind of have to put myself in a position where I'm going to, you go to Alaska, you're seeing new things all the time. It's old hat for the people that live there. But if they came down here, I'm amazed. I just had a guy out here to photograph grouse with me, sage grouse on the lek. And he wanted to photograph pronghorn. I mean, that's one of the big draws for him. He was from Canada. But his name was Ron, coincidentally. But he loved photographing the pronghorn. And honestly, Wyoming has more pronghorn than the rest of the world combined. So
what?
Yeah,
they have a lot
it's
of crazy. I
crazy.
didn't know that.
Yep. And so we just drive by them. I mean, they run through my front yard all the time. They run through the drive-through at the bank. They're everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And so it's something that we take for granted. But, somebody coming here and seeing things fresh, it's always nice to be reminded that, we live in a special place and have a special job and special time off activities because I get to be out all the time. So to see you starting and see your boys in that fresh new world where everything's new, that's what kind of, it's a good reminder to us that we should be more grateful, more excited about what we get to do and what we get to see. And that's kind of what drew me to you, Nehemiah, and the way that you're raising them too, to be curious and to see those things for themselves. And you and your wife are doing a fantastic job. And I think more people need to see what you're doing and follow suit.
Well, thank you. I mean, I really, really appreciate that. I know that I wanted to ask you all a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please. Nope.
What were some of the things that, you all, Jason, I heard that you said that your dad kind of raised you outdoors as well. And Ron, you were raising your kids outdoors. Like, what were some of the things that you all take away that were like really intentional or maybe not intentional, that you was like, man, I really like doing this with my kids, or I like my dad doing this with me, that really stuck with you all?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at it real quick, but for me, and I'll try to keep it short because, it's a whole life story, right? But for me as a little kid, my dad, I'm the oldest of 10, okay? So my dad was working all the time. So the only real time we had quality time with my dad is when we got to go out and go like camping or overnighter or fishing or hunting or whatever it was. And I really cherish those times. A lot of time for me, the nature thing is a connection with my family and my friends, right? That's kind of that's what started the intensity, I guess. And that's just carried on through my life, and it's turned into that same thing for me with my children and some of my friends. And then that actually led me into the photography thing, which actually is kind of like, nature on steroids, because I'm out there all the time now, year round, not just during hunting season, not just during fishing season, and I'm out there all the time. And it's just getting like worse and worse, if you will, right? And in a good way, because the addiction is real. And it's like you said, the curiosity, I think it was planted by my dad when I was little, and it just continues to grow. And it's like a boulder going downhill, a snowball going downhill. And it's just building and building. And I want to do more and more and faster. And let's go, we're going on this crazy adventure. Let's do it. I'm not going to wait till I retire. Let's just do this stuff. Let's go have these experiences. And so, yeah, I think in the short version of my story is pretty much that, hunting with my dad as a kid, spending time in the outdoors with my dad as a kid. And I owe my dad the world because of that, because I'm so grateful for that opportunity to be introduced to it. So yeah, now it just carries on, right? So I do that with my children. I can't wait. I've got 4 grandkids. I cannot wait to introduce them to stuff, and get them out and make sure that they're doing those same things. And so, yeah, that's my story. But
like it.
Ron?
I would be similar. I think, just I grew up in a different time than it is now, because I am over 30. So, we grew up in a time, and it's kind of like listening to your parents say, they had to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow, all that kind of stuff. But I grew up in a time where literally we weren't allowed to come back. We got sent out after school, and we weren't allowed to come back till the streetlights came on, and that they just wanted us to be out there wearing ourselves out and having fun. And me and my friends, just everything was an adventure. I remember running away from home when I was like 4 years old. My brother and I loaded up one of those little red wagons, and we loaded it up with everything and decided we were going to run away, and we were going to go up to the top of this mountain. And we didn't take any food. We took water and blankets and a rope.
You had it figured out.
That was it. Yeah, it needed a rope to climb the mountain. We were going up and going to take our wagon up there, you know. But it was just, we could go out whenever we wanted to, and there wasn't anything to worry about. You never had to worry about somebody coming grabbing your kid or anything like that. And so it was a different world in that way. And I think that kind of freedom honestly made me who I am today, because that's the way I still look at life is, I'm free to do whatever I want to do within the law. And so I do it. I'm out all the time. When the whole COVID panic, I just saw it as an opportunity to get out there and not have to worry about seeing anybody else, because everybody else was going to stay home.
Amen.
Right. I'm with you. I'm on the same page with that.
So I was out as much as I could be. And, even now, like I said, you kind of have to push the envelope to find something new. But it created a curiosity in me. And my dad was a coach. He started teach. I was born when he was very young. Both my parents were 18. And he was in college right away, got out of college. And I mean, when I was 4 years old, he was already, at 23 years old, he was already teaching and coaching. And I grew up in athletics, and it was always, there's time for that later on in life. There's time for that later on in life. And to be honest with you, my brother still coaches. He still has it in his blood. And my dad always wanted me to coach because there was just so much knowledge base there, and having that background. But to be honest with you, I told him even one time that, Dad, it's later on in life, and I'm gonna be outside. I'm not going to tie myself to a season, away from what I enjoy. And so I think that pushed me to excel, which has helped me in the photography thing. And there's plenty of people better than me for sure, but it pushed me to excel in that realm. But also, in the biological realm, I didn't ever want to be in the classroom either. I always wanted to be a field person. And so I never had any desire to go to graduate school, because that just meant you were going to crunch the data that everybody else got to go collect. And so I kind of focused on making sure that I was in the field. And now, I try to be out as much as possible. I'm not in that world anymore. But I think that curiosity that my dad and my mom and my grandparents on both sides of my family, both of them were wild people. I mean, we had a ranch on one side, and on the other side of the family, my grandma taught us how to, do everything that Native Americans did. We could make dye out of plants. We could make rope out of dried milkweed. We could, you could nap an arrowhead. You could tan a hide, make clothing.
Using the brain.
She taught us how to do everything. And so growing up in that way, I think it made me pretty self-sufficient. It also made me enjoy, you alluded to it right away, Nehemiah, when we started talking about, you talked about the plants being better than people to photograph, because you don't have to worry about any attitude or anything like that. And I enjoy being out in nature more than I enjoy being around people. And it's not that I don't like people. I joke about that a lot, but I enjoy the quiet, and I enjoy, the things that happen just because that's what needs to happen, and not, these forced relationships and that kind of thing. And so I do in that way see the world a little bit differently. And that came from, a lifetime of all those different circumstances that we just talked about. And unlike Jason, I didn't keep it short. Sorry.
That's really interesting. I actually learned some new things about you too, buddy. So
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
pretty cool.
keep them wild. I
like what you said. Feral.
Yeah.
I'm raising feral kids.
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
what you said. Yeah, man. I stole that right when you said that. I said, "Oh, I'm stealing that one."
It's yours. You don't have to steal anything. It's yours. I appreciate it. And that's why, I thought it'd be great having you on tonight. And I've enjoyed the conversation. And
yeah, me too. Appreciate it.
We're country kids up here. So to hear that perspective coming from the city, it's more difficult, I think, for you to get out and find those quiet places to get away and see things fresh. And so I appreciate the effort that you have to put in the city versus what we have. But you're welcome up here anytime.
Yep. Thank you, man. I appreciate it a lot. And it is, I wanted to, just one thing that I find is interesting, right? Like one of my favorite, are you all familiar with George Washington Carver?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The peanut guy, right?
Yep. He's a lot of things guy.
Right. He is. When I graduated from college, like I had an experience that kind of like, with God, that kind of like changed my like paradigm, changed my entire worldview. And I started studying George Washington Carver. And as I was studying him, and just like everything that he did, because he was known as just like the peanut guy, right? Mm-hmm. But out of the peanut, when I found out he had like over 200 inventions from the peanut alone, from the soybean, he had over 150 inventions, just from the soybean alone. And it just was so mind blowing to me when I read his biography. Once I was really researching him, he has a book that's called The Man That Talks with Flowers. It is probably it is a very small read, but it is one of the most influential books that I think I've ever read before, because he goes into detail on plant life, but as well just like how, God would like give him instructions on how to come up with these inventions and doing things with different ways, heating it at this temperature, using these chemicals to come up with these different inventions. And it just unlocked something within my mind, honestly, that was like, there's so many plants that are out here. And if he had over 200 inventions from the peanut, like, what don't we know about acorns? What don't we know about, like all of these other things that are out here? So I just, really just like to encourage everybody to, dig deep in whatever field that you're in, because there's probably a lot more that's within it than you even recognize, that you even know. I think human beings are amazing in what we can do, but I think that we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to, what is really out there to know about nature, so.
Well said.
That's awesome. We're going to call it right there, because that is the best place to finish this.
Great challenge. Yep.
Perfect. Amen. Good.
That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.